Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about The Deal by Elle Kennedy, also known as What Happens When a Sarcastic Music Major with Trauma, a Cocky Hockey Captain with Daddy Issues, one fake dating arrangement, and a whole lot of college hockey chaos gets thrown into the same book. And yes, this is your official spoiler warning. I will be talking about the full plot of this book, including the romance, the fake dating setup, Hannah's past, Garrett's family issues, the third act breakup, and my final rating. So if you haven't read The Deal yet and you don't want spoilers, this is your warning to go read it first and then come back. Because this book starts off looking like a fun, spicy college hockey romance, but it turns into something so much more. Before we properly get into the chaos of the deal itself, we need to talk about the characters, because this book really depends on whether you care about Hannah and Garrett as people. And honestly, I did. Starting with Hannah Wells, who is easily my favourite part of this book. Hannah is a music major at Briar University. She works part-time at a diner. She's preparing for this big winter showcase. And she's also somehow managing to survive being surrounded by men who keep testing the limits of her patience. She is smart, sarcastic, talented, and very good at acting like she has everything under control, even when she's carrying a lot underneath the surface. At the beginning of the book, Hannah has a crush on Justin Cole, this quiet, handsome football player in her ethics class. And look, I understand the fantasy. He's mysterious, he's broody, he reads Hemingway in public, and Hannah is sitting there like, finally, a man with depth. But from the start, I was suspicious because anytime a man is described as quiet and mysterious, I'm immediately like, okay, but is he emotionally intelligent or is he just standing there silently with cheekbones? And Hannah is very much trying to convince herself that Justin is different from the other jocks. He's not loud, he's not obnoxious, he doesn't seem like the type who treats women like disposable entertainment. And because of what Hannah has been through, it makes sense that she would be drawn to someone who feels safe from a distance. But the thing with Hannah is that she isn't just a girl with a crush. She's a survivor. And I really like that the book makes that distinction clear. Hannah is not written as someone broken beyond repair. She has trauma, yes. She has fear, she has boundaries. She has complicated feelings about sex, desire, trust, and safety. But she also has humor. She has ambition, she has a life. She has goals, she has friends, she has a voice. And I love that mindset from her. When she talks about not wanting to see herself as a victim, but as a survivor, I was like, yes, Hannah, exactly. Because what happened to her was horrific, and the way her hometown treated her afterward was even more disgusting. But she's still here. She's still building a future, she's still singing, she's still trying. And that made me very protective of her. Because every time some man in this book started speaking out of pocket, I was like, can we not? Can we give Hannah one peaceful day? One? Which brings us to Garrett Graham. Garrett is the captain of the Briar hockey team, campus golden boy, professional flirt, and walking proof that confidence can be both attractive and deeply irritating. At first, Garrett is a lot. He's cocky, he's pushy, he knows he's hot, he knows everyone knows he's hot, and he moves through campus with the energy of a man who has never once been told to sit down and be quiet, which frankly explains a lot. Because early Garrett's mouth, a public health concern. Some of the things he says about women, sex, puck bunnies, hookups, and dating had me pausing like, sir, I know you're in your early 20s, but please evolve. There's a very specific kind of early hockey romance man where he's like, I don't do relationships. I only do casual sex. Women always want more. I am simply too desirable to be contained. And Garrett definitely starts off with that energy. And I did not always enjoy it. But the annoying thing is Garrett also has charm. Against my better judgment, I understood why people liked him. Because underneath all the cockiness, he's not stupid, he's not lazy, he's not just coasting through life on being hot and good at hockey. He actually cares deeply about the sport, about his team, about his future, and later about Hannah. And the more we learn about his father, Phil Graham, the more Garrett starts making emotional sense. Garrett is not just a cocky hockey boy with commitment issues. He is someone who grew up under the shadow of an abusive father, a famous hockey legend who treated him less like a son and more like an extension of his own ego. So when Garrett says hockey is everything to him, it's complicated. He does love the game, that part feels real, but hockey's also tied to pressure, control, fear, anger, and this constant need to prove that he's better than the man who raised him. And that made Garrett a much more layered character than I expected. Then we have these side characters. First, Justin Cole, Hannah's original crush. I spent so much of the beginning thinking, this man is going to disappoint us, I can feel it. And while Justin is definitely not the great romantic destiny Hannah imagines him to be, I was actually surprised that he wasn't as awful as I expected. He's more of a plot device than anything else, but he does serve an important purpose. He gets Hannah moving toward the real emotional center of the book, which is Garrett. Then there's Cass, Hannah's duet partner. Cass is awful. Cass is the kind of man who thinks collaboration means everyone else should support his vision while he slowly sucks the oxygen out of the room. He keeps trying to control the song, make himself the star, and push Hannah into the background. Every time he appeared, I wanted Hannah to throw sheet music at his face. Then we have Allie, Hannah's roommate, who I really liked. She's supportive, protective, and she understands Hannah's boundaries without making her feel broken. She's the kind of best friend who can tease you, encourage you, and also quietly make sure you feel safe in spaces that might overwhelm you. And we finally have Garrett's hockey house. Logan, Dean, and Tucker. They bring a lot of comedy, and I can see why readers love this friend group. But also, these boys need a feminism installed like a software update. They are funny, yes, loyal, yes, entertaining, absolutely, but some of their comments had me staring into the distance like, this is why women need group chats. Now, let's get into the actual setup of the book, because the entire romance begins with one very important academic disaster. Garrett Graham fails his ethics midterm, and this is not just a, oh no, I got a bad grade, my ego is bruised situation. This is a, if I don't fix this immediately, my GPA drops, I can't play hockey, my entire future starts collapsing, and coach will probably murder me with his bare hand situation. So Garrett is panicking. And honestly, for a guy who walks around campus like he was personally sculpted by the hockey gods, it is deeply entertaining watching him realize that charm and abs cannot save him from philosophy ethics. Because Professor Tolbert does not care that he is Garrett Graham. She has given him an F and now he needs help. Enter Hannah Wells. Hannah somehow has aced the same exam that destroyed basically everyone else. And Garrett sees that A on her paper and immediately decides that she is his only hope. Not in a subtle way, not in a respectful, hello, would you consider tutoring me if you have time way?
Nope.
No. This man basically becomes an academic mosquito. He finds her after class, he asks her to tutor him, she says no. He keeps asking, she still says no. He texts her, he shows up at the diner where she works.
Bruh.
He keeps trying to negotiate, charm, annoy, and emotionally exhaust her into agreement. And Hannah's reaction is exactly what it should be, which is absolutely not. Because Hannah has a life. She's not just sitting around waiting for a hockey boy to need her. She's got so much going on right now. She has Winter Showcase to prepare for, she has Cass trying to emotionally drain her through the power of musical theatre arrogance.
What?
And she has her own goals that has nothing to do with Garrett Graham's GPA. But Garrett is persistent in the way that only a fictional college athlete can be persistent. And this is where the book starts walking that very fine line between, this is funny because it's romance banter, and sir, please leave this woman alone before I call campus security. Because on one hand, their back and forth is entertaining. Hannah does not swoon over him. She does not fall at his feet. She's not impressed by his fame, his body, his smirk, his whole hockey celebrity situation. She treats him like an inconvenience with cheekbones, and I love that. But on the other hand, Garrett really does not take no for an answer at the beginning, and I know the book wants it to feel like charming persistence, but there are a few moments where I was like, Garrett, baby, stop. She said no. Go read Kent by yourself. But then Garrett discovers Hannah's weakness. Justin Cole. Hannah has been crushing on Justin from afar, and Garrett catches on to it. And because Garrett is Garrett, he immediately turns that information into a business proposal. This is where the deal comes in. Garrett needs Hannah to tutor him so he can pass the makeup exam and keep playing hockey. Hannah wants Justin to notice her, so Garrett offers her a trade. She helps him academically, and he helps her socially. His plan is to basically take Hannah to a party as his date, make everyone see her with him, and hopefully trigger Justin's interest through the ancient masculine magic of jealousy. And I'm sorry, but that is such a ridiculous plan.
Nope.
It is also very college romance. Garrett is operating under the assumption that men want what other men appear to have. If Hannah shows up with him, then Justin will suddenly realize she is desirable, which is annoying but also not completely wrong in the world of this book, because Briar University seems to run on gossip, athlete hierarchy, and everyone knowing who everyone else is hooking up with. And this is where I started thinking, this has very she's all that energy. Not because Hannah needs a makeover, she absolutely does not, but because there is this social transformation element where suddenly, because she's connected to the popular guy, people start looking at her differently. And I have mixed feelings about that, because I don't love the idea that a woman becomes more interesting because a popular man validates her existence. But I do understand what the book is doing. Garrett is not trying to make Hannah better, he is trying to make other people pay attention to what was already there.
Ooh.
And for Hannah, this is tempting because Justin is her emotional blind spot. Normally she's smart, normally she has common sense, normally she sees through Garrett's nonsense immediately. But when Justin enters the conversation, suddenly her decision-making skills start buffering. And I get it. Not because Justin is that amazing, because at this point I was still deeply suspicious of him, but because Hannah wants to feel something. She wants to explore attraction again. She wants to feel desire without fear attached to it. And Justin from a distance seems like a safe fantasy. So even though she knows Garrett's plan is ridiculous, she agrees. And that is how we get the central arrangement of the book. Tutoring sessions in exchange for fake dating assistance. But what I like about this setup is that the deal is not really about Justin for very long. Justin is the excuse, Garrett's grade is the excuse. The real point is that Hannah and Garrett are forced into each other's space long enough to realize their first impressions were not completely accurate. Hannah thinks Garrett is just another cocky, oversexed hockey bro who gets whatever he wants because people are obsessed with him. And to be fair, early Garrett does not do much to disprove that. But then she sees that he's actually smart. He just struggles with applying the material. He cares about his team, he takes hockey seriously, he has more discipline than she expected. And underneath the arrogance, there is something heavier going on with him. Garrett, meanwhile, starts out seeing Hannah as the girl who can save his GPA. Then he realizes she's funny, talented, then he hears her sing, and suddenly this man is emotionally compromised. That moment is really important because it shifts their dynamic. Before that, Garrett wants Hannah's help. After that, Garrett starts seeing Hannah, not just as a tutor, not just as a girl with a crush on Justin, but as a person with talent, ambition, pain, humor, and this whole inner world he did not expect. And Hannah starts seeing him too, because the tutoring scenes become less about studying and more about connection. They tease each other, they annoy each other, they start sharing pieces of themselves. They talk, they accidentally build trust. And this is why the deal works as a romance setup. It begins as a transaction, but slowly becomes intimacy. The kind where two people, normally who keep parts of themselves hidden, start relaxing around each other. The kind where Hannah can be sarcastic and guarded but still feels safe enough to stay. The kind where Garrett can be cocky and ridiculous but also strangely gentle when it matters. So yes, the deal itself is silly, but underneath the nonsense, the book is building something that actually matters. Because Garrett thinks Hannah is going to help him pass the class, Hannah thinks Garrett is going to help her get Justin. But what actually happens is that both of them accidentally find the person who sees through the performance, and that is where the story really begins. Now let's talk about the romance, because this is where the deal really starts to work. As we know at the start, Hannah and Garrett are not giving soulmates. Hannah thinks Garrett is an arrogant hockey bro with too much confidence and not enough self-awareness. Garrett thinks Hannah is stubborn, sarcastic, impossible to impress, and clearly the only person on campus immune to his charm. Hannah does not care that he's Garrett Graham. She does not care that girls follow him around campus. She does not care that he's the captain of the hockey team. She doesn't care that he has abs. She talks to him like he's mildly irritating customer who has overstayed his welcome. And honestly, good for her. Garrett needs that. He needs someone who is not dazzled by him. He needs someone who does not treat him like a campus celebrity. He needs someone who will look him dead in the eye and say, "No, you're annoying," because I truly believe this man has gone too long without being humbled. But what makes their banter work is that it slowly shifts. At the start, Hannah is genuinely irritated by him. Garrett is pushing his way into her life because he needs something. The conversations are sharp, sarcastic, and full of little verbal jabs. But the more time they spend together, the teasing starts to feel less defensive and more affectionate. It becomes their language. They insult each other, but in that romance novel way where you know both of them are secretly having the time of their lives. And I love that Hannah makes Garrett work for her attention.
Yeah.
She does not act like being chosen by a popular man is the greatest achievement of her life. In fact, for a good portion of the book, she would probably rather chew glass than admit she enjoys being around him, which makes it even better when she does start enjoying it. Because the romance is not built on instant obsession. It's built through proximity, through tutoring sessions, through late night conversations, through pizza, through him hearing her sing, through her seeing glimpses of the Garrett he doesn't show anyone else. And the singing scene is one of the first moments where the emotional dynamic really changes. Up until that point, Garrett knows Hannah is smart. He knows she's sarcastic, he knows she is useful to him academically. But when he hears her sing, he suddenly sees this whole other side of her. Talent, her passion. He sees something private and beautiful, and for once, he doesn't turn it into a joke. Which matters because Garrett jokes about everything. He flirts, deflects, teases, and smirks his way through most situations. But in that moment, he is sincere. He is moved by her. And I think that's when the romance starts to shift from fun trope setup into something with actual emotional weight. Because Hannah is used to being underestimated in certain spaces. Cass keeps trying to push her into the background of their duet. Her trauma has made parts of her feel complicated and guarded. Justin represents this distant fantasy of attraction, but Garrett is the one who actually sees her up close. And then there is the safety aspect. This is probably the most important part of the romance for me, because Hannah's relationship with sex and intimacy is deeply affected by what happened to her. She is not afraid of all men, and she is not written as someone who has no desire, but desire for her is not simple. It comes with memories, fear, pressure, frustration, and this fear that her body will not respond the way she wants it to. So when the physical side of her relationship with Garrett begins, it had to be handled carefully. And I do think the book does that better than I expected. Garrett doesn't treat Hannah like a challenge to conquer. He doesn't act like he can magically fix her through the power of his hockey player anatomy. He slows down, he listens, he checks in, he pays attention to what she needs, and most importantly, he makes her feel safe. That is what makes their intimacy works. Not because Garrett is supposedly some legendary man in bed, although the book would definitely like us to know that Garrett has experience many times, repeatedly, with great enthusiasm, but the emotional reason it works is because Hannah trusts him, and that trust is built outside of the bedroom first. It's built when he drives her home and takes her concerns seriously, even if he jokes too much. It's built when he does not make her feel pathetic for having boundaries. It's built when Garrett starts becoming a safe person, not just a hot person. And that's where I started liking him more.
Nice.
Because early Garrett made me tired. Yes, I know this is a college hockey romance. I know part of the fantasy is the cocky playboy who becomes devoted to one woman. I get that trope. But there were still moments where I was like, Garrett, please stop speaking. I was starting to like you. The double standards also annoyed me, because the men in this book can sleep around it and it is framed as normal, expected, almost funny. But when women are sexually confident or interested in athletes, they get reduced to labels, and I hate that. I hate when romance books act like the hero's sexual experience makes him desirable, but other women's sexuality makes them embarrassing, desperate, or disposable. There's also a bit of not like other girls happening around Hannah, which I didn't love. I understand that Hannah is different from the girls Garrett usually hooks up with, but I don't need every other woman to be made shallow so the heroine can look special. Hannah is already interesting. She doesn't need other women to be diminished for us to see her value. So yes, I had issues with some of the gender dynamics in language. But when I focus specifically on Hannah and Garrett as a couple, I do think the romance works. Because Garrett changes around her. not in a fake overnight personality transplant way. He's still cocky, he's still sometimes annoying, and says things that make me want to throw a feminist pamphlet at him. But with Hannah, he becomes softer, more careful, more emotionally present. And he also gets jealous, which is entertaining, because remember, this whole arrangement starts because he's supposed to help Hannah get Justin. Garrett is meant to be the fake date, the wingman. Except then he starts catching feelings. And suddenly, Garrett Graham is not having a good time. Watching him slowly realize that he does not want Hannah with Justin is very satisfying. This man is out here pretending he's being logical and helpful, while internally he is probably screaming every time Hannah shows interest in another guy. I enjoy that very much. I especially like that Hannah doesn't immediately understand her feelings either. For a while, she's still attached to the idea of Justin because Justin represents something important to her. He represents possibility, attraction, a version of herself that can want someone without being afraid. But then Garrett becomes real. Justin is the fantasy across the room, Garrett is the person sitting beside her. Garrett is the one arguing with her, studying with her, making her laugh, making her feel safe, and slowly making her feel less alone. And that is why by the time Hannah and Garrett actually become romantic, it feels earned. The spice is there, the chemistry is there, the banter is there, but the emotional safety is what makes the romance memorable. Hannah does not need Garrett to save her. Garrett does not need Hannah to fix him. But they both need someone who sees the parts of them that are usually hidden. So even with my complaints, I understand why readers love Hannah and Garrett. Because underneath that college chaos, their relationship has real tenderness. And against my will, against my better judgment, and despite several moments where I wanted Garrett to be placed in verbal timeout, I did root for them. Now, let's talk about the heavier side of this book, because this is where the deal becomes more than just a college hockey romance with fake dating and Garrett Graham being allergic to silence. Because yes, the book has all the fun stuff, but underneath all of that, both Hannah and Garrett are carrying serious trauma. And I actually think this is why the romance works as well as it does, because they're not just two hot college students flirting their way through a fake dating arrangement. They are two people who understand in very different ways what it feels like to have something terrible happen to you and then you have to keep living like you're fine. Starting with Hannah. When she was 15, she was essayed at a party. And one of the things I appreciate about the book is that it doesn't only focus on the attack itself. It also shows the aftermath, the emotional aftermath, the social aftermath, the legal aftermath, and the way an entire town can decide to protect the wrong person. Because the assault was horrific enough. But then Hannah had to survive being doubted. She had to survive people turning against her. She had to survive her hometown treating what happened to her like a scandal instead of a crime. And let me just say, the second I realized the town of Ransom was acting like Hannah was the problem, I was ready to burn that place mother effing down. Except Hannah's parents. They can stay. Everyone else, ashes. Because the way that town treated her made me furious. This girl was a child. She went through something horrific, and instead of being protected, she was blamed, judged, and basically pushed out of her own home. Her parents stood by her, which I loved, but they paid for it too. They went into debt. They became isolated. They were punished socially and financially for supporting their daughter. And that adds such a painful layer to Hannah's character. Because she gets to leave Ransom, she gets to go to Briar, she gets to build a new life. But her parents are still stuck there, still dealing with the consequences, still living in a town that treated their daughter like garbage. So Hannah carries guilt. Not because she did anything wrong, because she absolutely did not, but because trauma does that. It makes people feel responsible for damage they did not cause. It makes survivors feel like a burden when they were the ones who deserved protection. And that is why I liked Hannah so much. Because she's not written as this fragile, empty shell of a person. She's funny, she's ambitious, she's talented, she's sarcastic, she's got best friends, she has dreams, she wants romance, she wants intimacy, she wants a future. But she also has wounds. And the book lets both things be true. She can be strong and still be affected. She can be healing and still have fear. She can want intimacy and still have complicated feelings about her body. She can be a survivor and still have moments where the past touches the present. That felt important. Then we have Garrett. And I know I've joked a lot about Garrett's stupid mouth because truly sometimes this man talks like he was raised by a locker room group chat. But when we get into his relationship with his father, his character becomes much more serious. Phil Graham is awful, like truly awful. He's not just a strict sports dad who pushes his kid too hard because he wants him to succeed. No, Phil is abusive, controlling, manipulative, and obsessed with using Garrett as an extension of himself. And that makes Garrett's relationship with hockey complicated because Garrett genuinely loves hockey. That part is real. He loves the game. But hockey is also tied to his father. It's tied to pressure. It's tied to violence. It's tied to this man who has spent Garrett's life trying to control him through fear, money, and reputation. So when Garrett is terrified of losing hockey because of his GPA, it's not just about the sport. It's about his future and freedom. It's about proving that he can become something on his own terms, even if his father is constantly looming over him like a villain in a very expensive coat. And I hated Phil. Every time he showed up, I was like, absolutely not. Someone remove this man from the premises. But Phil becomes even worse when he brings Hannah into it. Because once Garrett and Hannah are together, Phil sees her as a threat because she matters to Garrett. And for someone like Phil, anything that matters to Garrett is something he can use. That is where the third act breakup comes in. Phil threatens Hannah. He basically uses Garrett's future against her and makes her believe that if she stays with him, she will be the reason Garrett loses everything he has worked for. And Hannah, being Hannah, panics. She loves Garrett, but she also knows how much hockey means to him. She knows how hard he has worked. She knows how much he wants that future, so she breaks up with him. And I did not like that. Not because it didn't make sense. Emotionally, I understood why she did it. Hannah has spent years feeling like the people she loves pay the price for what happened to her. Her parents are still stuck in ransom. They are still financially struggling. So when Phil threatens Garrett's future, it hits the deepest wound Hannah has. She cannot bear the thought of being the reason someone else loses something. But oh my gosh, Hannah, tell him please. I spent that whole section internally yelling, do not keep this from Garrett. Tell him his demon father is threatening you. This man already hates Phil. He would believe you immediately. But of course, because this is a romance novel, we need pain before the resolution. So Hannah breaks Garrett's heart to protect him, and Garrett does not understand what really happened. And that is what makes the breakup so frustrating. But once Garrett finds out what his father did, that is when the story gives us one of the most satisfying emotional turns, because Garrett chooses Hannah. But more importantly, Garrett chooses himself. He finally cuts that financial and emotional cord with Phil. He refuses to let his father control his life. He decides that if hockey is going to be his future, it will be his future, not Phil's. He stops letting this man hold money, reputation, and fear over his head. Yay! Overall, I did enjoy this book. For me, this was a solid, easy, addictive college romance. I can absolutely understand why people love Garrett and Hannah. The setup is fun, the banter is strong, the chemistry is there, and once Garrett and Hannah move past the whole I need tutoring and please help me get another guy arrangement, their relationship becomes genuinely sweet. I liked them together. I like that Hannah did not immediately fall at Garrett's feet. And I like that Garrett, underneath all the cocky hockey boy nonsense, became someone who made Hannah feel safe. That was probably the strongest part of the romance for me, because this book could have handled Hannah's trauma really badly. It could have turned Garrett into the magical man who fixes her. And thankfully, I don't think it does. Hannah's healing is still hers. Garrett doesn't erase what happened to her. He doesn't make everything suddenly okay. But he does become someone she trusts. That trust is what makes their intimacy feel meaningful instead of just spicy for the sake of being spicy. I'm giving the deal 3.5 stars. It was cute, it was emotional, it was heavier than I expected. It frustrated me in places, especially with some of the gender politics and Garrett's early comments, but I still cared about the characters and I was genuinely happy for them by the end. I'd recommend this if you like college romance, hockey romance, tutoring setups, fake dating chaos, banter, protective male leads, emotional healing, and couples who start off annoying each other before becoming each other's safe place. Have you read this one? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!